Today, we're going to be taking a look at what is camera aperture. Aperture controls the depth of field of your image. Simply put, how sharp or blurry the background is. It is the secret sauce to getting that flattering bokeh effect in your photos. The aperture is determined by f numbers, or known as f-stops on your, pay attention to this, lens, not camera. The lower the f-stop means that your subject will be more in focus and the background will be blurrier. The higher the f-stop means that your background will be less blurrier and more in focus. Let's go over some terminology you will hear a lot on the internet and among other photographers. The smallest f-stop on your lens is known as the maximum aperture. I know, confusing, right? This is because the smallest f-stop will open up your lens the widest, allowing in the most light. The highest f-stop is known as the minimum aperture. It lets in the least amount of light, closing more and more of the lens. This means aperture has a pretty big role in controlling the exposure of your image. It'll affect other camera settings like ISO and shutter speed. Let's go over certain use cases on when you want certain aperture values. Number 1, the bokeh effect. Get the aperture as wide open as possible. In other words, get that f-stop as low as possible. Number 2, nighttime and low light conditions. You'd want to use a low f-stop to let in as much light as possible. Number 3, background and focus with the subject. You'd want to be looking at a range of the f-stop from 8 to 22. So, it's one thing for me to be telling you about all the things aperture does to your image. It's a whole other story to see it in action. Me and my friend Charmander, we're going to take some photos and I'm going to show you what aperture does to your image. Okay, on the left side is my photo of Charmander at f2.8. And on the right is at f5.6. As you can see, the photo at f5.6 has its background a little bit sharper. You can see the owl label more on the bottle and the fairy lights in the back are less bokeh, if that's even a word. Next is f8. The background is even more sharp and you can start seeing more detail in the plant and the wire of the fairy lights. But the bottom left of the image is still a bit blurry. You'll see a big improvement there in the f16 image. On to f16, look at that bottom left area. You can now see detail in the fairy light wire, and that area is not as soft as before. Here on f22, we are at the minimum aperture my lens could shoot with, and as you can see, everything in the image is nice and sharp. A huge difference compared to the 2.8 image. Lastly, here are all the images side by side. See if you can spot the difference amongst each. If this video taught you something new, please hit the like button so this video can spread to more beginner photographers. My mission is to make learning photography as simple as possible without boring you with the hard technical details. So, as you can see, based on the photos we took today, these are the key takeaways. The smaller the f-stop, it means a brighter image and a blurrier background. It also helps you achieve that dreamy bokeh effect. The higher the f-stop means a darker image and the background is more in focus. If you're shooting at night or low light conditions, consider lowering that f-stop to let more light in. Now, this may seem like a lot to take in, but that's okay. When I first started my photography journey, none of these concepts clicked until I was put in situations where my knowledge had to be tested. So that's why I encourage you to go grab your camera, play around with aperture, and start shooting. Happy photographing, y'all.